continue with what the papers are saying on their front pages. So just saying that House clamps down, calls for clamp down on middlemen who are hoarding petrol, and then the Lagos Calabar Highway project, FD offers 2.75 billion naira to 10 businesses marked for demolition. Top mass stock market lost 3.6 trillion in April as investors switched to treasury bills. Let's look at what the Punch is saying on minimum wage. FG Labour talks deadlocked. NSC defends 615,000 demand. Tinubu says government unions failed to reach consensus, assures workers of living minimum wage. On the top mast, fuel scarcity. FG plans a 15-day emergency fuel supply. And Lagos uncovers underbridge apartment where tenants pay 250,000 rent. Interesting days. All right, let's go to the next paper, which will be Guardian. Let's look at what the Guardian is saying. The Guardian on Labour 2, Labour demands inflation-proof pay. What will be inflation-proof pay? Frequent wage review. Minimum wage talks takes backseat in Kano Kwara as NLC Max May Day. Telco losses, irregular levy remittance threaten NCC's 549 billion target. And workers worry as FG assures on May 1 date for new minimum wage. Super Eagles, how to support indigenous coaches to grow and win laurels. Vanguard, before we go to their international newspapers, what's Vanguard saying? Mayday, Labour gives FG May 31 deadline on minimum wage. Banks close 2 million accounts over BVN, NIN, and others. Lagos Calabar Coastal Highway, we talked about 2.7 billion compensation that the government is paying to those that would demolish their stuff, with 1.5 billion liters of petrol to last 30 days. That is what reps are saying. It is not having it. Is it available for people to buy? Insecurity, Matawale urges U.S. to share intel on terrorism, banditry. Mayday, governors promise better working conditions for workers. Now let's go international, and we start with this heartbreaking story of this child murdered in Britain. Daily Express, and to think that he's actually a Nigerian UK citizen. Man charged with murdering 14-year-old schoolboy Daniel Ajori. Heartbroken family pay tribute to wonderful child. He was killed due to a knife attack. All the papers, actually, almost all the foreign papers have that on their front page. But let's look at The Guardian. Labour faces criticism over loophole in plan to ban 0 hours contract. Hundreds of students arrested at U.S. protest over Gaza war and the Palestinians. This has the same story, Metro. Let's go to I newspaper. It says UK Rwanda plan could be delayed as civil. I newspaper. I'm done with the. Okay, we don't have. Let's look at Daily Mail. Daily Mail. I hope we do have that. Daily Mail. All right. A day that Rwanda became a reality, but then. First migrants handcuffed and detained in dramatic rates. 800 officers launch Operation Vector. But surprise, civil servants launch new legal bid to stop flights. There you see the story of a true scholar, Daniel Ajorin, 14 killed in sword attack. He was a teacher's son. Too bad. Business Day, South Africa. Zibanye drags Mantashe to court. Minor contest awarding of right for the Akanani project. All right, now we're bringing Lemi Ogebe to look at, review some of these papers, and we start with this day. Lemi, good morning. Glad to have you join me.
Good morning. Thanks
All right. On this day, you have NUPRC moving to speed up approvals for divesting IOCs, assessed to raise oil production by 700,000 barrels per day. It's giving affected multinationals option to conclude process or wait for audit report. But then you have the story of Tinubu, days of worry for Nigerian workers over earning living wage gone, and then House calls for clampdown on middlemen holding petrol. What is living wage? And House is calling on clampdown for people holding petrol.
Okay, let's start with the issue of the petrol. It's important, the narrative coming especially from the front page lead story of this day, that what the consumers, what the citizens really need is for them to get to work already and ensure that this fuel scarcity and the long queues that make life very difficult for Nigerians are really tackled and rested once and for all. Yeah, on a day like this, it's important to also speak to the statement of the president that days of worrying are over for labor, Nigerian workers. It's really a dilemma, knowing what Nigerian workers have been through and are still going through. Very resilient set of people. Nigerian workers are amazing, very dogged. As difficult as things are, even with the scarcity of fuel, they queue all through the night in order to get fuel and go to work to serve the nation. But how hopeful, or how does the statement of the president renew the hope of workers? You balance that vis-a-vis what labor is demanding. I think that on both sides, we need to ask everybody to be realistic on the wage demand. Right now, government has increased, and it says it's tentative, pending when they will announce the genuine minimum wage that is being discussed. Government has increased between 25 and 35% the income of some workers. Now, this is not across board. So at this point, a lot of people still will not get even from this. And what is 25 to 35% increase in salaries? It's going to be barely, I'm not sure it's even going to be up to 15,000 naira. What can 15,000 naira do today? So one thing is clear, labor is demanding 615,000 naira as minimum wage. I have shouted myself us on that matter in the past few months, that labor has made such demand that it is unrealistic. It puts displays labor's level of maybe comedy. It looks very ludicrous when you are talking about 615. 30,000 naira minimum wage has not been met, not just by federal government. You hear of workers who say, even at the federal level, that even at the end of the month, they've not been paid salaries. At the state level, many states are owing. We know how bad it is. So why talk about 615? And government itself must also be realistic that if tariff of electricity has gone up by 300%, if fuel pricing has gone up by about 300%, and inflation rate is about 33%, then it will not make any sense to actually increase minimum wage with marginally. It is important to make it realistic. It is important to make it a living wage. And right now, it is important also that labor puts up a gap like it's serious enough by giving something that is realistic and practical.
Right. The Punch, fuel scarcity, FG plans 15-day emergency fuel supply. What does that mean? How can that help? And Lagos uncovers under bridge apartment where tenants pay 250,000 rent. Can you beat that?
Wow. For the plans of labor of government in order to solve the situation of fuel scarcity right now, it's important first to know where the rain started beating us, to know how to make amends. What really is the situation? What has caused this crisis? NNPC has repeatedly used the word logistic issues, but they are economical with the truth. Come out, tell Nigerians what it is, so that that can be addressed once and for all. It's not enough to just continually paper the cracks, because it will recur as soon as we are even having a breather if this is not addressed. And it's an embarrassment to our nation that at this stage in our lives we would go for this long without being sure of petrol supply. Lagos uncovers, it's amazing, it's really amazing, but it speaks again to the failure of intelligence. For how long has that been? You have 86 rooms apartments, 86 under the bridge. So it tells you why insecurity continues to go unabated, because there is failure of intelligence. And somebody is collecting 250,000 per annum from each tenant for God knows how long this has been. And it's really troubling, really troubling. Then it speaks to the fact that we really have serious housing deficits, because who would want to go under the bridge and stay under the bridge at all? You know,
failure of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the Vanguard before we go international. Insecurity. Matawale urges US to share intel on terrorism, banditry. Matawale is asking US to share intel. How does that sound? Do you agree with that? Eagles will qualify for 2026 World Cup. Finidi, you know, he's been appointed coach of the Super Eagles, and banks close 2 million accounts over BVN, NIN, and others.
Well, everyone should share intel, but I don't know why we are going to be demanding US to share intel. When under the Buhari regime, when United Arab Emirates gave intel on Nigerians who are funding terrorism, till tomorrow it's been kept under wraps. There's no disclosure. Citizens themselves who should share intel, you find that they are also at risk. You share intel, and at the end of the day, the person who is picked up is released, and your cover is blown. So there's a lot of efforts that need to be made by security intelligence agencies in order to win confidence of people you expect to share intel. We can take care of such a situation by ourselves, not asking United States to go talk about that. Then, of course, the Super Eagles, is good to talk, to be positive. We know Finidi George in his playing days, he was called Finito because he was a very deadly finisher. And so we hope that with the sound bite, he's going to really put his acts together. The best footballers have not often made the best of football managers. Football is what unites us. People forget their tribe and their tongue. They forget their religion when it's football. So we hope that Finidi can bring back the glory days. We have the best crop of young players today across Africa, plying their trades. So it's about management, especially man management. I hope that Finidi can learn from the work that people like Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola have done in man management. Of course, you cannot fault Arteta on that. It's one of the best there is.
All right, let's look at, before we let you go, I love this Daily Express. It was even from Daily Express. I learned that Daniel, all the other papers are just saying Daniel. But this said a man charged with murdering 14-year-old schoolboy Daniel Anjorin. That was when I knew that this boy is a British Nigerian. Heartbroken family pay tribute to wonderful child.
Wow. At a time like this, we commiserate with the family. No parent should be in the space they are in right now. And it's really troubling. And that's the reason. You can see the speed with which this was even responded to. Taser was used to demobilize Mr. Monzo, the murderer. Since he's not been convicted, they say the alleged murderer, you know, and at least effort is being made immediately to make sure that it's brought to book. Unfortunately, the act he has committed is an irreversible act. A 14-year-old boy scandal is put off by a murderous human being, and you know, it speaks to the issues of mental health also, while not holding brief. And that's why it's important in this part of the world, because we must learn lessons from the Daniel story. When you remember again that recently some parents were convicted because they knew that their son had mental health issue in the UK also, and they still gave him access to a gun. And at the end of the day, ended up killing people.
And then coming to apologize.
Yes. So, but of course, they were sentenced for that, negligence and whatever. So we must learn from these experiences in Nigeria. Mental health issue is increasingly challenging in our part of the world. As a matter of fact, World Health Organization conducted a research last year and said about 25% of Nigerians have one mental health challenge or the other.
Especially with the things they have to cope with.
Yes, so it's important that government also begins to look at it and create psychosocial supports and facilities for Nigerians.
Thank you so much for sparing time to join us this early on Daybreak. Lemmy, we'll go over there with a paper press preview. For more, follow us on X and Advised.